Good evening. Welcome, California Geographic Society Conference members and anyone else who is watching this. I am putting together this virtual field trip video for the 2021 virtual At Home Together conference. I'm standing in front of the Oakland Museum of California for a couple reasons. The first one, of course, is because this was going to be one of the field trips of the 2020 conference had the conference actually taken place. This museum, although many museums across the state are reopening, and some of them have already reopened, unfortunately this particular museum is going to be staying, not opening until about June or so sometime. But there's another reason why I'm in front of this museum specifically. This museum opened up a little bit over 50 years ago, I believe in 1969. And there is a major exhibit here that is very interesting in terms of physical geography and the state's ecology. There's one of the people that was involved in the design and planning of this particular exhibit that looks at 7 different regions across the state of California, ranging from the Tehachapi Mountains to the Coachella Valley to the Cordell Banks off of Point Reyes to Mount Shasta, the Sutter Buttes, and the city of Oakland. This exhibit is a derivative of a museum that was, or an exhibit that was started by a naturalist, a California naturalist by the name of Elna Bacher. Elna Bacher was a self-taught naturalist that was from LA and spent most of her life there. And she was someone that was not originally a biologist or an ecologist. She was started off as a teacher. But she and her husband, who was a biology professor at LACC, traveled the country and traveled the world in the 1950s. In the 1960s, she got involved in many conservation organizations, including the Nature Conservancy and the Sierra Club and others. But then in the 1970s, she wrote a couple landmark books, the most well-known being An Island Called California. This book was originally published in 1971, and then there was a second edition that came out in 1984. And this is really kind of one of the classic books on the ecosystems and regions of California, with going into a lot of detail on local flora and fauna. When I discovered this book back in 2012, the first year I was in California, it really kind of got me I fell in love with the style of writing. It was both very detailed, but also like very poetic. And what we're going to do in this field trip, in the 4th chapter in this book, there is a chapter called Patterns on the Hills. And this chapter, Patterns on the Hills, talks about how a 15-mile drive along the Panoramic Highway in Marin County from Mill Valley to Bellinas Lagoon goes through several different ecosystems in a way that few other places across North America really does along coastal California, going through the ecosystems of Chaparral coastal scrub, Grassland, mixed evergreen forest, and salt marsh. And so what we're going to be doing in this virtual field trip is that I'm going to be driving that segment and stopping by and taking a look at the various ecosystems. Even though this was written 50 years ago, it'll be a very interesting look and seeing how these ecosystems are still here despite all the different kinds of changes that have occurred. Okay, so again, like I said, she was involved in the design of a exhibit here, and we are going to, like I said, take a look at that stretch of the Panoramic Highway from Mill Valley to Bellinas Lagoon very shortly. So join me for that. See you then. Hi, here I am with beautiful Bellinas Lagoon here in the background, with the hills looking east off in the distance. The road that skirts the east side of Bellinas Lagoon is Highway 1. Really no accessible places to experience the lagoon a little bit more intimately. This is a trail here from a park on the west side of Bellinas Lagoon. I'd like to read it a little bit to you from the first couple chapters of Chapter 4 of Patterns on the Hills, from Elna Bacher's book, An Island Called California. So this starts off comparing how diverse the ecosystems are in this regionon. Okay, we're going to be going up on the Panoramic Highway toward Mill Valley, stopping at several places at the various ecosystems that are mentioned 50 years ago in her classic book. Patterns on the Hills. Anyone driving the 118 miles between Dubuque and Cedar Rapids, Iowa, on a summer day will see the following: some towns, several rivers, livestock, crop fields, other cars, people, billboards, buildings, and woodlots. They add up to a pleasing, prosperous-looking landscape or a deadly bore, depending on one's viewpoint. Central Iowa has its seasonal changes, but it does not have scenic variety. Considering its enviable position in the farming world, it probably doesn't care. Corn is king, and healthy stands of this crop are the best views possible to their owners. In contrast, anyone driving the 15 miles from Mill Valley to Bellinas Lagoon via the Panoramic Highway in Marin County, just north of the Golden Gate, will pass through or alongside 7 of the major natural communities found in California: Chaparral, coastal scrub, grassland, coniferous forests, mixed evergreen forest, beach strand, and salt marsh. This mosaic of plant associations is quite bewildering to the casual observer. Why is grassland adjacent to a dense redwood forest? Why is there a patch of scrub here and a magnificent stand of Douglas fir there? Common sense would suggest a reasonable uniformity of natural vegetation in the 5 miles the crow flies between these 2 points. Marin County, however, is only a segment of many square miles of similar coastal landscape. Okay, so this is a great lagoon because it's small enough where you can really see the whole thing. There's many birds here that depend on the fluctuating tidal rising and lowering of the tides. Many great egrets. There are terns. There are several species of gulls and wading birds, including willets and others, and other gulls and other shorebirds. Okay. This was probably a river valley during the Ice Age, when the sea level was a lot lower. When the sea level rose, of course, it filled the whole thing in with sediment. And there is a sand spit that basically blocks Bellinas Lagoon off in this direction, where the community of Stinson Beach lies. So we are going to be heading over that way on the Panoramic Highway, just past Stinson Beach, past Tamalpais State Park, and toward Mill Valley, going through many ravines that contain patches of redwood forests very close to the low-growing coastal sage scrub and coastal prairie. And so with that, I will see you the next time in the next segment. Hi, so this is our second stop on this virtual field trip video, and you can see a big sweeping view. We were just over there in Bellinas Lagoon. This is Stinson Beach right over there. Again, the sand spit created by longshore current over hundreds or thousands of years, and the community was basically built along there. So this is a great vantage point. Again, over here you do see forests of Douglas fir predominantly, and some redwoods. And we're going to be passing by some more ravines with some redwood forest. But all of this is coastal sage scrub. The dominant shrub here is actually mostly coyote bush. If you're in Southern California, this is a little bit different composition, but you're still talking about shrubs that, don't really get too far above most people's waists. The low-growing scrub, again, a little different from chaparral. We'll probably see some chaparral, again, further down the Panoramic Highway. One thing about the coastal sage scrub here, as opposed to in Southern California, is that because you have more fog and a bit more moisture, you actually have poison oak and raspberry bushes growing really on these exposed uplands. Further south in the state, where it's drier, you typically only find that in more sheltered and shady ravines. But basically, why is it that you have this sweeping vista? And just down the road, we're going to see some redwood groves and other mixed woodlands. Well, it's basically because even though this area gets fog and so forth, it can be very, very windy. That wind does also contain a lot of salt. So this sweeping area over here is, a little bit harsher for trees with salt-laden winds that prevent it from growing. A little further up toward the entrance of Mount Tamalpais State Park, we're going to also see some coastal prairie. So anyways, we're going to be there next, and I'll see you then. Hi, this is our third stop. This is just a little past the entrance of Mount Tamalpais State Park. So this is a little off the Panoramic Highway, but this is a really, really beautiful stretch of coastal prairie. This is your classic ecosystem where you find the bulk of California's, famous super blooms. Of course, many ecosystems have super blooms, but this grassland, which is mostly dominated by non-native oak grass and bromes and foxtails and so forth. The native bunch grasses are perennial bunch grasses mostly, but of course you do see quite a few poppies. This has been a bit of a drier year, of course, but and so many lupins, as well as a wildflower called blue dix. And so this is a little higher elevation than the coastal sage scrub, the coastal scrub that we saw before. This area certainly does get less rain, but because of that, that means that there's less competition with larger shrubs and other woody vegetation for many of these wildflowers. So again, you can see some splash of color purple, although it's might be a little bit small in this video. But anyways, of course, you can see the ocean back over there. And we're going to take a look at some wooded ecosystems here momentarily. See you then. All right, so this is a typical mixed woodland, mixed evergreen woodland that can be found in many parts of coastal California, where you have a little bit more moisture, such as north-facing hillsides, in ravines, and any other kind of environment that gets just a little bit more moisture, or where the soil retains a little bit more moisture than you would find in the chaparral. This tree in front of me is one of the more common trees you find here in these mixed woodlands. It is a bay or laurel tree, common all up and down the state in both coastal mountain canyons as well as in the Sierras and in the lower elevations. It is actually distantly related to the bay tree that you do find in the Mediterranean. This is actually the familiar coast live oak. There are many coast live oaks here. They do get a little taller than what you would typically find in Southern California, and they get more moss growing on the trunks. And of course, you do have here some of the lichen that sort of hangs on the branches. But we also have a lot of Douglas firs here, which is a dominant tree in these mixed woodlands. They typically also grow in areas along with redwood forests. However, though, where redwoods are a little bit more fire adapted, Douglas firs are not. But we have many Douglas fir seedlings over here and many mature trees scattered throughout. And there's one other kind of tree a little bit further off over there that's kind of one that is kind of reddish with peeling bark. It has fairly large leaves. That is the Pacific Madrone, and it is it kind of has a similar kind of bark as like the manzanita, but it is one of the dominant trees in these mixed woodlands here. And just so to give you an idea of where I am, we're very close to the summit of Mount Tamalpais, and but again, any kind of north-facing hillsides, ravines where they don't get as much direct sun, and so when the fog and when the rain reaches the soil, it just doesn't evaporate as much, so allowing for a more of a wooded ecosystem as opposed to the shrublands. Okay, so we're gonna make a couple more stops. We're gonna take a look at a serpentine outcrop, which are quite common around here on Mount Tamalpais. It is, of course, California state stone, giving rise to many plant species that grow nowhere else because serpentine has very low nutrient levels, and serpentine soils have rather high levels of some of the toxic heavy metal elements that most plants really can't deal with. And then the last stop is going to be in Muir Woods National Monument, which you do need to reserve a permit or a parking space ahead of time still during this time of COVID. But anyways, that's going to be our last stop. So we're going to make, actually 3 more stops. Also going to take a look at Chaparral and see, again, how different it is from this mixed woodland. With that, I'll see you then. All right, so this is our second to last stop. It's getting a little bit more midday, a little bit sunnier, so I put on my hat here. But this is typical of the chaparral that you find here in Marin County. A lot of the species are the same as the chaparral you would find in Southern California. All around here, this is mostly chamois, which is one of the chaparral shrubs that's most adapted to the warmest and driest soils. But we also have, of course, a lot of manzanita. I'm not sure if you can see the oval-shaped leaves and the red bark, but there's quite a lot of it here. There is also, I'm not going to pick them, but another kind of wildflower. I'm going to talk about maybe what are some of the kind of endemics here, but we also have toyon. There are a few toyon shrubs, which of course are famous for having the red berries, sometimes called holly berry. And supposedly it might be where Hollywood neighborhood of Los Angeles gets its name from, but that's a little bit debatable. But I really want to bring your attention to, although all of this rock here is sandstone, local sandstone, just about 100 yards away, or if not even that, maybe only a couple hundred feet, is a really fine outcrop of serpentine. Okay, serpentine is the state stone. It's rather shiny, kind of gray-green, kind of smooth, almost glassy. Serpentine is a metamorphic rock. It originates from very deep, really it's a mantle origin rock. And of course, the coast ranges of California are known to be essentially a series of accreted terrains where basically islands and ocean floor that didn't subduct kind of got welded onto the land. And that's pretty much all of the coastal hills and mountains where they get a lot of their origin. But this rock, of course, is very unique because it has a very low nutrients and rather high concentration of some what would normally be toxic heavy metals. It does give rise to plant species that are adapted to that and only there, where they would be outcompeted elsewhere. So there is a type of manzanita. I'm not able to tell my manzanitas apart, but that does give you some ideas about that. Okay, so our last stop is going to be the most well-known ecosystem of coastal California, and that is going to be the redwood forest. Our last stop is Muir Woods, and I'll see you then. Bye. Hi, welcome to Muir Woods National Monument. So a lot of people might wonder, why is Muir Woods so special? Why does it get so many people? There are other redwood forests right here in Marin County, not that far away? Well, of course, this is an old growth redwood forest, whereas the forests that you would drive through along the Panoramic Highway are second growth. They are ones that have grown back over areas that have been logged over, maybe about 100 years ago. Of course, here down this far south in the Bay Area, redwood forests are a little bit more geographically limited to certain microclimates. Whereas, of course, when you get north of Santa Rosa or Sonoma and start getting into Humboldt County, approaching there in Mendocino County, there, of course, you have very extensive redwood forests, and of course ones that are less crowded than here. But this is really very close to San Francisco. This is no more than a 45-minute drive from San Francisco, so it obviously gets a lot of visitors. Right now, you need a reservation because of COVID. Last year, even through June, it was completely closed, so you do need to make a reservation in advance. Anyways, but yeah, many of these are, of course, several hundred, and they can even get to 2,000 years old. Redwood forests are actually adapted to a certain amount of occasional low burning wildfires, as well as they're adapted to floods. And they grow really, really tall on floodplains. And this is one reason why they get so old, is because they can handle some of these things that nature throws at them, whereas many other trees can't. So, Mirrorwoods National Monument, and with this concludes our tour of the ecosystems along the Panoramic Highway in Marin County, just north of the Golden Gate. Thanks again. I'll see you next time. Here I am at Reyes National Seashore. This is, I don't even know if it's really an official trail, but it might be just a, I don't know, a fire trail or something. But it is off Mount Vision Road, and you can see all these beautiful coastal bishop pines that thrive in all this fog. And this is especially great because, unlike the road that goes to Limontour Beach, this area was not burnt up in the Mount Vision fire. So there's still a lot of big old bishop pines all along this trail and all up and down the road. A big bishop pine forest. Here we can see the fog literally moving across Inverness Ridge and down into Tamales Bay down there. This is a pretty common occurrence here. Golden Gate Bridge from the Spencer Battery Lookout. Golden Gate with the fog coming in. And there's the city. There's Alcatraz and the Oakland Bay Bridge. Not really a fan of that new addition, that skyscraper that